So this story was inspired when I went onto my GitHub account. So GitHub is a place in which you store code and And it said there was a section there that allowed me to put in an email address of someone that can take over my code when I die. And this had me thinking. So, this is Robin. Robin used to live in America with her mom. Robin then moved from America to Canada. And every morning, her dear mother, to keep in contact with her, because obviously she missed her daughter and she wanted to show care, she would look on her phone, get the temperature of the place, and in America they use degrees Fahrenheit, and in Canada they use degrees Celsius. So her mom used to find her location and send her what the weather will be like in Canada for her today in Fahrenheit. And obviously Robin could have done this herself, and it's very easy for her to do this conversion and whatever. But this was something that her mom did to show her a little bit of care, and she really loved it. She spent the rest or a few years in Canada, and she never learned the conversion from Celsius to Fahrenheit, and that's because she didn't need to, because her mother was filling this role of some daily communication to be like, hey, I'm thinking of you, I hope you're doing well. And then her mother, unfortunately, she died, and she didn't get these updates anymore. But what she did have is she had a long list in her phone of messages back and forth of years of her mother sending her the weather, indicative of this care that her mother had. And sometimes she would go back and just look at it and reminisce about her mother. And then in 2023, Google said, oh hey, by the way, we're shutting down inactive accounts, SOS, which meant that her old mother's account with the information was going to be deleted. And she obviously frantically was like, oh my gosh, I need to back this up. Oh, not because she necessarily needed all of this conversion information from the weather, because it was an important part of something that she used to remember her mother. And that was a time where Robin was like, oh my gosh, I need to now start reading terms and conditions, because I did not know that Google could do what they wanted with my data. Tamara Nice, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, wrote a book about technology and mortality. And she said, do giant tech companies really want to be data legacy stewards? Are they equipped to fill this role from a legal and ethical perspective? And her opinion is she doesn't think so. So the daily text or interactions that she had with her mother on a digital format, they felt like they were hers. And it makes sense why it's so jarring to be like, oh no, they're no longer going to exist anymore. And that's because, psychologists call this psychological ownership. And it's the feeling that you own something or something is mine, not from a legal title, but from investment of yourself into it. And this investment happens over time. Knowing something intimately, shaping it and allowing it to shape you. And these 10 years of daily text messages, a thread in which she lived inside and had numerous experiences inside. And this feeling of these are my texts, these are mine. Why are you taking them away from me? That feeling is legitimate because of that investment into it. And there's a philosopher called John Locke. He argued something quite interesting. And he said that you own what you put your labor into. So if you work the land and you are taking care of it, all this kind of stuff, you eventually own it. And legally, that has started to become a thing. If you are for years and years working something, you eventually do own it. Obviously, there are huge caveats here, and there's exploitation, and there's all this other stuff going on here. But it's still this feeling of like, I care about it. Like, I'm looking after it. I care. And I think you understand where I'm coming from with this. And I want to take this back because it's quite difficult to understand owning something in a digital world. And that's where this becomes quite a difficult discussion to have. Imagine those text messages were letters sent. If you send a letter to someone, they own that letter. They can do what they want with it. And what's happening now in this digital world, where when you own something, when you invest in it, when you do this, it's still not yours. But that feeling of ownership is still there. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at here. So let's take the example of a letter. When someone sends you a letter, the letter is yours to do with what you want. If you want to keep it and put it in a box under your bed and save it for later, you are the sole discretion of that. Nobody had control over it, not the paper company or the pen that someone used to produce this letter. And digital threads, they're different. And they're different in physical form, but also in the law. Because it's a license, permission to use a service, granted to a living individual, under terms for someone that would keep logging into the service. And this license, in most cases, doesn't transfer to someone else. There's no, inheritance to keep things going, if you kind of catching my drift here. Because when the person dies, the terms and conditions that this person accepted, they don't really have any weight because this person is no longer alive. So it means that it ceases to exist, which to a degree makes sense because it was the living user that said, I accept them. Which means there's not a flaw in the design of the technology, but it might have a little bit of absence in that design. And death was maybe a user behavior that no one thought about when designing software for living people. Because most of these social media things were designed to connect living people to each other. Locke, our philosopher, he is describing you own what you put your time and energy investment into. And there seems to be a gap forming here now. Because people are investing time and energy and things into things. Take, for example, even other social media. So like your Instagram. Like if you are an Instagram person that makes money off Instagram or YouTuber or something like that, you're putting time and effort into these platforms and creating your stuff on them. And then you're giving it to these platforms and saying you have a license over them. And that's in the terms and conditions, which means your investment is kind of given away, and you should know that you are giving it away, but that flips everything on its head now. Or maybe it's just like a great scapegoat to be like, you know what, okay, well, you gave it away, it's no longer in your position, therefore we can shut it down. But there are a lot of people that are getting, like, I saw on Reddit as well, a Reddit thread where Google is cracking down on AI created stuff, therefore they're just terminating accounts, and many YouTubers are being really upset because yes, okay, maybe they are AI bad ones or whatever, but there are some that it's being misaligned, like they flagging it incorrectly and just shutting down their account. And you kind of don't have a leg to stand on because is it still yours? Locke would say it is, but these licenses would say no. And this is kind of bringing into the argument of death as well. If you're not there anymore and the account is inactive, does Google have the right to remove it from their servers because it's taking up space and costing them money? And this is what I find fascinating. I think most of us know the origin story of Facebook. If you don't, go watch, I think the movie's called The Social Network. But effectively, it started off as something to connect Harvard students together and kind of figure out if some of them were single or not. And that was like in 2004. That's, what is that now? 22 years ago? And when it started out as this thing, you're not designing for what it has become today. 2004, they weren't thinking about, oh, what happens when someone dies? They were just thinking about, how do we connect people? Let's add a poke button in. And tech has this crazy way of evolving over time. because it is almost it's malleable in a way. Software can change and change very rapidly in comparison to hardware. Changes are a lot harder to do, to ship, to replace, to do this kind of stuff because you own the hardware. Here, they can change the software and make things better. But in that malleability of software comes a different shift in focus of what these apps are. And exactly like Facebook. Facebook is no longer for Harvard students trying to figure out if you're single or not. It is now, I don't even know what Facebook is these days, but it's not for that audience of people anymore. And when you bring death into it, there was a Harvard study that said by 2070, there will be more Facebook accounts of dead people than alive people. And that's crazy to think about. Obviously, that's in quite a few years' time. But would that be something that Facebook needs to start thinking about now? Or are we just going to exist with that because that's not the biggest problem? The biggest problem now is trying to get more advertising from AI slop. Having more people that are dead is weird, right? Because what would they potentially do with that? Because a platform is built for alive people, not dead people. But think about, people are smart and cunning. What happens if they change the entire model now? I don't know. I'm just thinking extremes, but it's a weird thing to think about. If you have things on this earth and you die, you leave them behind because, as we all know, you can't take them with you. And some of those objects, they hold a special memory for the people that you leave behind. And a lot of the things that people leave behind are objects, are things in themselves, like this stick. It's something here. And it's because they persisted in the world. They were a thing that you can have a memory of. In this digital world, it's not a thing. Yes, maybe it holds some storage in ones and zeros, some binary code, but it's not a thing in itself. But those things, they hold a lot. Like a voice note from someone still carries the intonation of their voice, how they rounded their R's. It carries something for the people that were left behind, a memory of that person. And in a similar vein, it's like a letter with their own handwriting. Except the letter is tangible. And we have moved into this digital world where we have the most detailed, most intimate collection of things about humans, like voice notes, pictures, videos, their thoughts, their opinions, what they chose to share. We have got all of that at our fingertips with this digital world. And a mass amount of it. It's not just a letter every week. It's almost like you can get a daily thing from the people and all of it lives on servers that don't belong to you or me. And underlying by terms and conditions that we just accepted. And these terms and conditions were written for a living user. And they're governed by cost calculations made by people that were thinking about growth and engagement and long-term usage. Not about this collecting of memories that persists after the person dies. And it begs the question, what do we do about this? And whose responsibility is it to manage a space in which someone died but still holds living memories for others? I find this fascinating because, touch wood, I get to live a long and fulfilling life. Will I be looking through photo albums like I do when I'm with my grandparents, seeing letters that they've written, showing pictures of their family, physically, look at my box. I've had these box of memories. A lot of my memories exist on a Google, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube account. And if I don't ever own any of that, I can't put it in my box and show my people when I die. Which means it's at the discretion of those companies if these exist. And I find that interesting because maybe it's a better preservation of memories because my grandmother's box, the picture is faded and it's like, and the letter is all, ugh. So it doesn't have, it's not as clear of a thing, whereas the digital thing is a lot clearer and a lot more animated. Like, I'm talking here to this camera, and this will be stored digitally, and maybe my ancestors would potentially watch something like this and be like, oh, wow. But will they? Because it's not for me or my family to protect. It's for, does Google say, oh no, what, this account has been inactive for how many years? We're going to delete all of this information because it's costing us money in our servers. So effectively, we've got too many boxes. We need to throw some of these boxes away. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting thought idea, and I wonder if people are doing something about this day and age. I don't know. Anyway, it's Wednesday. Happy hump day. Check it tomorrow.